For 12 years, I poured my heart and soul into that company. I wasn't just an employee. I was the one who redesigned our entire logistics system when everything was falling apart. Shipments were late, inventory was a mess, and clients were threatening to leave. I stayed up nights, fixed it all, and brought our efficiency to an all-time high. Everyone started calling it the Turner method, even though no one outside our office knew my name. But I didn't mind. I wasn't in it for fame. I just wanted to do a good job. Be someone the company could rely on. But slowly, things started to change. New management came in, young guys in flashy suits who barely understood what we did. They'd look at me like I was some outdated machine. They'd nod through my reports and then ignore every suggestion I made. One of them once joked in the break room, "Isn't Turner like ancient?" I laughed it off, but that cut deep. After everything I'd done, I was suddenly invisible. Worse than that, I was treated like dead weight. They started pushing me aside, handing key projects to people who barely knew our systems. I trained some of those people myself. Still, I kept my head down, hoping my work would speak for itself. But one Friday afternoon, they called me into the conference room. No warning, just a cold, rehearsed speech about restructuring and fresh direction. They thanked me for my service and handed me a severance package like it was a consolation prize. I walked out with a cardboard box, but inside I was boiling. Not because they let me go, but because they thought they could erase me. Like I hadn't been the brain behind their biggest success. Like I was disposable. What they didn't realize was I still had the blueprint. The entire logistics overhaul. I had it all documented. Improvements, systems, vendor contacts, custom software add-ons. They fired the one person who truly understood how it all worked, and they were about to find out just how much that would cost them. Because I wasn't going to beg. I was going to build my own system, my own clients, and soon they'd be the ones left behind. When the CEO suddenly asked me to lunch, my gut told me something wasn't right. In 12 years at the company, he'd never even said my name, let alone invited me out. He only spoke to VPs and board members. I was a senior logistics manager, important, but not top floor material. Still, I went. Maybe he finally saw my value. Maybe this was about recognizing my years of loyalty and results. We met at a sleek restaurant downtown. He smiled too much, spoke too softly. He asked about my family, my hobbies, things he'd never cared about before. I played along, but the whole thing felt staged, like he was reading from a script. Then came the shift. He leaned in and started talking about new directions and leaner operations. He said the company was trying to evolve and bring in fresh energy. That's when I knew. This wasn't a lunch. It was a quiet firing. He said my role was being phased out, that the company was moving toward automation and cross-functional youth teams. He used buzzwords to make it sound exciting, but it was just a nice way of saying I was too old, too expensive, too experienced. He smiled while delivering the blow, like he expected me to thank him for the opportunity to move on. I kept my face calm, but my hands clenched under the table. I realized then, I wasn't invited to lunch because I mattered. I was invited because he didn't have the courage to fire me in the office. He wanted a clean exit, a quiet scene. I paid for my own meal, walked out, and didn't say a word. But I wasn't walking away empty-handed. I had more than 12 years of company secrets in my head. I had vendor contracts I personally negotiated, client relationships I built from scratch, and a custom software system they barely understood. They thought they could replace me with flashy titles and younger faces. They had no idea they just created their own disaster. This wasn't the end for me. It was the beginning of their downfall and my comeback. The waiter had just cleared our plates when the CEO folded his hands on the table and looked me straight in the eye. That fake, polite smile never left his face. "I want to thank you for everything you've done," he said slowly, like he was about to hand me an award. But I wasn't that naive anymore. I braced myself. Then came the words, "We've decided to let you go. It's for the greater good of the company." Just like that. No warning, no performance review, no sign that anything was wrong. I sat there frozen for a second, thinking maybe I'd heard it wrong. But he continued, explaining how the company was shifting focus and how streamlining operations meant eliminating some senior roles. Mine apparently was the first to go. He talked like this was some noble, strategic move, as if firing the guy who rebuilt their entire logistics system was a brave decision. He even tried to soften the blow with compliments, said I was a real asset and my legacy would live on. Legacy? I wasn't retiring. I was being cut loose like a used part. And the worst part? He timed it perfectly. right after the main course, just before dessert, like he didn't want me to cause a scene in public, like I'd quietly accept it with my coffee. I forced a tight smile, but inside I was burning. I'd worked through holidays, skipped vacations, fixed crisis after crisis for this company, and now I was being thanked with a pink slip served on a silver platter. No loyalty, no appreciation, just cold business. But I didn't let him see my anger. I nodded, stood up, and shook his hand. He probably thought I was taking it well. He had no idea that he just made the biggest mistake of his career. Because while he was busy celebrating his smart decision, I was already planning my next move. He thought it was over, but he forgot one thing. I built the engine that kept his company running, and now I was walking away with the blueprint. He had dessert. I had revenge on the menu. The Monday after they let me go, I heard through a friend in the office who replaced me. It was the owner's nephew, 26 years old, fresh out of business school, no real-world experience, no idea how the logistics system worked. And yet, he was handed everything I built like it was a birthday present. My office, my projects, my team, the same team I trained, led, and fought for during the toughest years. Just like that, it was all his. They didn't even try to hide it. He posted a photo on LinkedIn sitting at my old desk with some cheesy caption like, "Ready to drive innovation and take the company to the next level." The comments were full of praise, mostly from people trying to stay on his good side. But I knew the truth. This wasn't about innovation. It was nepotism, plain and simple. He didn't earn that seat. He inherited it because of his last name, because he played golf with the board members and called the CEO Uncle Rick. He had never worked a night shift, never stayed late fixing broken supply chains, never dealt with angry clients when a delivery was late. But now he was leading the logistics department, throwing around buzzwords and trying to impress people with theories he'd only read in textbooks. My old team was confused and frustrated. Some reached out to say they missed me, that things were already falling apart. He'd canceled vendor contracts without understanding why we had them, changed the warehouse layout based on some presentation he saw online. Orders were getting delayed. Data was all over the place, but no one could say anything, not without risking their own jobs. I watched it all from a distance, quiet but furious. They replaced a proven system with a child's experiment, and it was already showing cracks. And still, no one up top wanted to admit the mistake. They were too busy congratulating themselves on being forward-thinking. But I wasn't sitting still. While they played office politics, I was laying the foundation for something bigger, something smarter. They took everything from me, but they also handed me the perfect reason to fight back. The golden boy was about to learn what real experience looks like. What they didn't realize when they fired me was that the very system they depended on, the software that ran their entire logistics operation, was mine. I built it from scratch when the company was struggling to keep track of shipments, warehouse inventory, and vendor communication. There was no off-the-shelf software that could do what we needed, so I created a custom solution. I wrote every line of code, designed the back-end, and set up the entire data infrastructure. And here's the catch. They never fully bought the rights. Legally, the intellectual property was still mine. They thought just because I worked there, everything I built belonged to them. But the contract was clear. I had developed the system under a separate agreement as a consultant during a merger, and that clause gave me ownership unless they paid a final transfer fee, which they never did. I kept that little detail quiet because I never thought they'd be foolish enough to cut me loose. After they replaced me with the owner's nephew, I started getting calls, first from my old team, then vendors. The system's glitching, data's not syncing, inventory's going haywire. I knew exactly why. It was running on autopilot without proper updates or support. The golden boy didn't have the skills to maintain it, let alone fix anything when it started failing. Behind the scenes, I still had access to the backend. I didn't touch a thing, yet. I wasn't going to sabotage them. I'm not a criminal, but I was watching everything unfold in real time, and they had no clue. They thought they owned the engine, but all they had was the shell. The heart of the system, the brain, was still connected to me. I knew it wouldn't be long before they'd come crawling back, asking for help, but I wasn't interested in saving them. I was planning something bigger. If they wanted to play dirty by replacing me without cause, then I'd let the system expose their mistake. They built their future on something they didn't even understand, and I held the one thing they couldn't replace, no matter how many MBAs they hired. The source code was mine, and that meant the power was still mine too. It didn't take long for everything to start falling apart. Within just a few weeks, the cracks turned into chaos. Clients who had been with us for years started pulling out. Orders were going missing. Deliveries were late. Some shipments got sent to the wrong cities entirely. The software that once ran like a well-oiled machine was now full of bugs, crashing during peak hours and freezing right when critical updates were needed. The golden boy, the owner's nephew, had no clue how to fix anything. He'd messed with the settings, tried to implement flashy updates he didn't understand, and when things started breaking, he pointed fingers at everyone but himself. The support team was overwhelmed. They were dealing with angry vendors, frustrated clients, and endless complaints from the warehouse staff who couldn't track inventory properly anymore. The once smooth system had turned into a digital nightmare. My old team, the people who knew how it worked, were either silenced or reassigned. No one was really in charge anymore. Just a fresh-faced MBA with a fancy title and zero technical experience. The worst part, the leadership still didn't get it. They kept sending out internal emails about temporary issues and growing pains, trying to convince everyone it was just part of the transition. But it wasn't. It was a full-blown breakdown. Revenue was dropping. Longtime partners were walking away. Even some of the board members started questioning how things had gone downhill so fast. I stayed quiet, watching it all unfold from the sidelines. I didn't have to lift a finger. The system was exposing them all by itself. They had no backup plan because they never thought I'd be gone. And now the company was drowning in its own arrogance. I heard whispers that the CEO had called in outside consultants. But no one could figure out how to stabilize the system. They didn't know the structure, the logic, or even the architecture. That was the power of building something from the ground up. I knew every corner of that system like the back of my hand. And they didn't. Their golden boy was sinking fast. And the empire they kicked me out of, it was crumbling right under him. All because they thought a last name mattered more than experience. As the company spiraled, I was already 10 steps ahead. The day after they fired me, I started building something better. I had the experience, I had the knowledge, and most importantly, I had the blueprint. While they were busy trying to patch holes, I was quietly creating a new logistics platform, one that was faster, smarter, and more efficient. I didn't need a big office or a huge team. I just needed my laptop, a quiet space, and the fire they lit in me when they showed me the door. By the time the cracks in their system turned into full-blown failures, I had already soft-launched my service to a few key clients, ones I knew were unhappy, and just like that, word spread. My platform wasn't just better, it actually worked. It had real-time tracking, smoother interface, fewer bugs, and support that didn't make people wait hours. Clients started calling me, asking how soon they could switch. I didn't chase them. They came to me. Then came the call I expected but didn't plan to answer. The CEO himself. His tone had changed. No more fake smiles or greater good speeches. This time he sounded desperate. They wanted me to come back. Said they'd make it worth my while. Said the company needed my leadership. I listened silent while he rambled through a rehearsed apology. Then I told him calmly that I wasn't available because now I was competition. I had already secured funding. I had a waiting list of companies ready to migrate. And I wasn't building this just to survive. I was going to win. They threw me out like I was disposable, but now they were learning I was the backbone all along. They didn't just lose an employee. They lost the very brain of their operation. And no, there was no buyout big enough, and no title shiny enough, and no bonus fat enough to make me crawl back. They made their choice when they gave my seat to someone who hadn't earned it. Now they could live with that decision while I watched their clients and their credibility switch over to the system I built from the ground up. Without them, I knew the rules and I followed every single one of them. No non-compete, no client restriction, no IP clause they could hold over me. They thought firing me would be the end, but it was just the beginning. I didn't need to play dirty. I played smart. I reached out only to people I had personal relationships with, people who had worked directly with me over the years and trusted my work. I didn't have to convince them. They were already frustrated with the chaos after I left. Missed shipments, buggy systems, poor communication. It was all pushing them to the edge. So when I told them I had launched my own service, better tech, better pricing, and actual support, They were ready. One by one, they started moving over. Some even brought new referrals with them. I never mentioned my old company. I didn't need to. Their mess spoke for itself. All I had to do was offer a solution that worked. I wasn't stealing. I wasn't breaking any contracts. I was simply giving people what they needed. Reliable service with someone they could trust. And I made sure every move I made was clean. Emails, calls, proposals, all documented and above board. If they tried to sue, I had proof that nothing I did crossed any legal line. What hit them hardest was not just that I was winning, it was that I was doing it by the book. They couldn't stop me. They couldn't block me. They couldn't touch me. I was operating fully legal, and yet I was gutting their client base from the inside out. Clients that made up nearly 60% of their revenue were now with me. I had spent 12 years building those relationships, and they forgot that trust doesn't transfer with a title. You can't just plug someone new into a role and expect loyalty. Loyalty is earned over time, and they'd thrown that away when they threw me out. Now I was turning the very foundation I built for them into the reason they were crumbling. They underestimated me, but more than that, they overestimated their control. And that's why, while they scrambled to hold on to what was left, I was already expanding, legally, cleanly, and powerfully. It didn't take long before the pressure hit the top. Clients kept leaving. Revenues dropped. Investors started asking tough questions. Their logistics system was still broken, and the golden boy had no idea how to fix it. Every promise he made fell flat. Shipments got delayed. The software glitched constantly, and angry clients took to social media. The company's name, once solid, became a punchline in industry circles. And then came the real blow. Share prices started falling. Fast. The board couldn't ignore it anymore. The CEO, the same man who smiled through my termination lunch, was now facing the consequences of his arrogance. His big move backfired. They held an emergency meeting, and within hours he was out. Fired, just like that. And the golden boy, he resigned the next day, citing mental health and a need to travel. But everyone knew the truth. He was in over his head from day one. While all of that chaos unfolded, I was thousands of miles away, sitting under a palm tree in Bali. I watched it play out from my phone, sipping a cold drink, no stress, no meetings, no drama, just peace. My new company was thriving. Clients were happy. My team was growing. And the best part? I didn't need revenge. I had results. Seeing their empire fall wasn't just satisfying, it was justice. They thought they were untouchable. They thought replacing experience with bloodline was smart business. They thought burning a loyal employee would come without fire. But they were wrong. They burned the bridge while I was already building a better one. I never had to shout or seek revenge in some dramatic way. I just focused on building something stronger while they collapsed under their own bad decisions. Watching it happen from paradise, that was just a bonus. The same company that tossed me aside was now barely standing, and every piece of it crumbled because they chose ego over value. In the end, I didn't need to destroy them. They did it to themselves. I just gave the market a better option, and the market responded. After everything they did, I didn't just bounce back. I built something better. What started as a betrayal over lunch turned into the biggest turning point of my life. I poured my energy into my own company, using everything I'd learned over 12 years. I knew the industry inside and out. I knew what clients hated, what they needed, and how to deliver it without the layers of red tape and ego. I didn't rush. I stayed quiet, strategic. I picked the right people, hired smart, focused on quality. I didn't just want to compete, I wanted to set a new standard. And it worked. Word spread fast. My first few clients became loyal advocates. They talked, they referred, more clients came. And before long, we weren't just surviving, we were scaling. We created tools that were faster, cleaner, easier to use. No bloated systems, no empty promises, just real results. I treated my team with respect, the kind I never got. We moved like a unit, everyone knowing their value. There were no office politics, no golden boys, just hard work and shared wins. Within a year, I wasn't just stable, I was thriving. Bigger contracts, stronger margins, international clients. I started getting featured in industry articles, podcasts, even invited to speak at events where my old CEO used to brag. The same people who ignored me in meetings were now taking notes from my presentations. And the lifestyle? Night and day. No more waiting for vacation approvals, no more emails at midnight from people who didn't know how to do my job. I chose my hours. I traveled when I wanted. I wasn't just earning more, I was living more. They took me out to lunch to end my career. Now I sit at better tables, with better people, running a company that I own. Every now and then, I hear updates about my old company, new managers, constant restructuring, still struggling to regain their footing. But I don't dwell on it. I'm too busy building, too busy living the life they tried to take from me. I didn't just get even. I got ahead, way ahead, and I did it all by betting on myself. If you enjoyed the revenge story, like, share, comment, and subscribe to World Revenge Stories, where every tale is a new saga of revenge.